Sorry, sir. No, we're good. If the phone rings, maybe if you can just check the front door because they have the phone number up there to get in.
Okay.
Because the rest of the office is closed.
There's a phone call that just came
Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is investing in Airbnb in London. Topics that we're going to cover today are London trends, types of tenants. We're focusing on Airbnb for this. Examples with cap rates, a little bit about me, and at the end, if you guys want to, we're going to go to a functioning Airbnb. That part's optional.
Oh.
And you guys can come with. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, for sure. So the London market, still a seller's market under 500,000. Multiple bids are still the norm. Hi. Houses often go over list, but that doesn't mean only sellers are benefiting. There's still lots of good deals if you know where to look. People are still overlisting their properties and therefore they sit on the market. So when a house has been on for a while and someone has overpriced it, you still have an opportunity to get in there and get something at a better price than the ones that get listed lower and then obviously cause bidding wars, which then go over. Keller Williams agent, I just joined this company a month ago and they have caravans, so we go to each other's listings before they even hit the market. A lot of listings will get sold before they even hit MLS. So it is a benefit to have agents that work together within the office setting, which is why I really like working here at Keller Williams, and we do have the opportunity to see properties before they're on MLS. The rental market's always been strong in London. If you're already a landlord, you probably already know that. The types of people you can rent to: families. You're going to usually do a 12-month lease. It's going to be the lowest return. Sometimes it's a safer group to lease to, but it's going to be a lot less money coming in. There's students by the room for 8 to 12-month leases. And then what we're going to talk about today is Airbnb guests. And that can include families for short-term and students and some other people that I'm going to talk about. So, do you need a license? Right now, Airbnb is still in sort of a gray area, but technically in London, if you're going to be renting, you do need a rental license. The initial application as of January 1st, 2017 was $165. If you need a fire inspection, it's going to be $171. The annual renewal is $55, so you pay that every year. If it's a duplex, there could be additional fees, or a triplex, etc. And the property owner is the one to pay the licensing fee, so if you're the owner/landlord, you're going to be the paying it. London.ca is a good resource for that kind of stuff, so if you need to learn more about that, I suggest you check out that website. So, why do students use Airbnb? So there's exchanges for 4 months or longer. So I've hosted people that are doing exchanges from Europe or exchanges from the States. Some students don't want to sign a 12-month lease for various reasons. Co-op programs for a semester, you can usually get people for 3 to 4 months that are doing a co-op at one of their work placements. Resident doctors, who are my favorite people to host, you can get for 4 to 6 weeks. When they're finishing up their medical school, they have to do different placements in different hospitals. So those last 4 to 6 weeks, and that short-term rental is pretty popular at the Airbnbs that I run. And some people are moving to London, and before they can get a lease for 12 months, they need somewhere to stay, so they will book on Airbnb. If they need somewhere to stay short-term after their lease is complete, so if they're students and they're staying on after their exams or something like that, then they might not obviously want to sign another lease, but they need somewhere to stay. Hotels are really expensive, so they might book the place for 3 weeks or less. I've had people come back that were doing part-time school and just stay the night before an exam, especially in the winter, to make sure that they're going to get there on time. Yeah, there's tons of reasons why students use Airbnb, but that at least touches on some of them. But students are dirty, aren't they? That's what a lot of people think when they're worried about renting to students. But what I would say is either parents or OSAP, which is a debt essentially, is going to be paying for their rent. So a lot of students are actually taking things seriously and they don't want to screw up their education. So they're actually pretty awesome to rent to if you find good students. The London Police have a hands-on program now. This is a photo from St. Paddy's Day. They're a lot more hands-on and a lot more presence, I would say, around Fanshawe. So you don't have to worry so much about parties getting out of hand, and it really depends on what type of Airbnb you set up. In the end, on Airbnb, you rate each other. You're going to rate the club cleanliness of your guest. So it's less likely that they're gonna leave a mess. There's some ratings up there from when I was traveling. So it's just kind of like the idea that when you know someone's watching, you're gonna behave better. When you know that when you check out of an Airbnb, then you're gonna get rated, then you're less likely to leave a mess, especially if you're gonna be a repeat guest or you're gonna use the service more than once. Then you're gonna wanna make sure that you're getting a good rating so you can find another place to stay. And I have 231 reviews as a host, which is good. I think it's part of the reason that I get booked a lot. Once you start going with this, it's like a snowball effect. So the more reviews you get, the more people will book it and the more you can charge. So basically you want to make sure your house is clean when you're hosting, as well as the guests are going to try to leave it as clean as possible. So it's a little bit different and better in my opinion than just straight up student rentals. But so a little bit about London. If you guys live here, you know Western University is London's 4th largest employer. It's home to full-time faculty and staff for 35,000 students. There's over 300,000 alumni. A lot of them come back for homecoming, which is another good time to get Airbnb guests. There's different people that come for exchanges. There's teachers that come for exchanges as well. I've had a surgeon stay at my Airbnb who was doing a medical exchange. The university attracts all sorts of workers. And yeah, the surgeon I hosted last year was really awesome. I played pickup sticks with him and he's very good at it. Obviously he's a sure hand. The examples for Western, why there's a lot of Airbnb guests are endless, but that just gives you some idea. So if you want a few more examples of who might book in a specific area that you're living in, then we can talk about that one-on-one after, because there's different reasons for all the areas in London. So other students that use Airbnb, the North American Trade School. One of my guests came for the North American Trade School and he did the home renovations program, and he is now one of my Livein managers. He is a really great Livein manager. He knows how to fix everything. He's installed a toilet, done a bunch of stuff that I don't know how to do hands-on and I don't want to learn how to do. So you can meet a lot of awesome people from Airbnb, and for him, he stayed with me long term, and then now he's taken over and he's one of the managers on my property. So there's also the private police college, private aesthetics college, and other private colleges. So those programs are shorter too. So people aren't going to want to book sign a 12-month lease. What's the point? There's constant flow of renters in the city. They got to pay rent to someone, so why not us, right? Airbnb rental overview, you can rent out the entire unit to business people. They have a whole new section on Airbnb right now that is specifically for business trips. So if you're not gonna have a shared space at all in it and there's no pets and there's a few other things with it, then you can rent it out specifically to business people. You can rent out by the room with a cleaning company if you're gonna wanna have someone private to come in and clean the room in between. Or you can rent out by the room with a live-in property manager, which is the business model that I focus on. I find it most efficient to have someone that lives on the property who's going to be able to clean, watch, guests when they come in, make sure there's no parties, all that sort of thing. So number 3 is definitely the one that I focus on for my properties. Insurance. Airbnb has their own insurance, so there's host protection, which covers up to $1 million liability. And it might cover other claims for damages depending on if you know which guest it was. When you do Airbnb by the room, it's a little bit trickier to get claims for damage if you don't know exactly who did the damage. But if you do it by the entire unit, then you know which guest obviously did the damage, and it's a lot easier to get the money there. I've had minor stuff broken, or I had someone cancel last minute who I had just set up a brand new bedroom and I bought brand new sheets for them, and they canceled at the last second, but they were given a full refund. And when I called Airbnb to complain, they ended up asking me to submit their receipts, and they paid for the bed sheets I bought for the guest. So they do listen to the hosts. That was just one example. I've had them pay me out for guests that canceled when I've called them up. They're really there to support the host, because obviously the hosts are the reason they're making money and they're running the business. So I have experienced firsthand a lot of support from Airbnb. I'm not an insurance expert, but I do know that Dwayne Gagne, there's the contact info up there, and I can give you guys a copy of this after, at Ontario West Insurance, does know which specific people will give you insurance for an Airbnb house. And I know that Square One Insurance does do Airbnb house insurance. So the insurance that I'm talking about for Airbnb doesn't cover your house for like a flood or whatever normal type of insurance. That's specifically related essentially to guest stuff. You're still gonna need house insurance on your home, and you still need to tell your insurance company what you're doing with it. So that's why I put these examples up, because Airbnb is so new that not all insurance companies will cover you if you're under, if you're doing Airbnb and you don't tell them. So something important to note. Reminder, like I said, I'm not in the insurance business, and I would say get 3 quotes on anything. I always say that for anything you're gonna do in business. Get 3 quotes, make sure you talk to 3 different people so you know what you're doing before you proceed. Okay, so having a Livein Manager at the discount of rent for $300 to $400 a month inclusive is what I have at my properties. Basically, I give them like a bigger space or like one of the bigger rooms so that the discount on the rent for $300 or $400 is actually a really good deal. In 2 of the houses, they have their own bathrooms, so that kind of adds value. Basically, they live on the property, they get a discount in rent, and they watch the app for me. They clean all the main areas of the house, and then they clean all the bedrooms in between the bookings. So I'm still making money off the live-in landlord. They are happy because they're getting a bit of a discount, and they have a little bit of responsibility. And then I don't have to worry about my house being empty or getting trashed with like a group of people when no one's on the property, when you have people coming in and out. Yeah, if you know London, you know one street to the next, the pockets of who could be in that area and even the house values are going to be very different. So there's some really good spots in East London that I recommend, but there's also some not so good spots in East London, so you have to be very careful about what pockets. I mean, I'm sure everyone knows to avoid like Kipps Lane or being directly on Quebec Street. I wouldn't recommend. So when you're doing an Airbnb, you want to make sure you're not in a dangerous neighborhood, because guests are going to comment that. Obviously, if they don't feel safe in the neighborhood or if there's a lot of stuff going on. I'm just going to talk about myself for a little bit. Basically, I bought my first house in 3rd year of university. It's actually 10 years ago now. It's the left-hand side of that. It's a semi-detached. Back then, I got it for $150, just over $150. The market in London, as you guys know, I'm sure has gone up quite a bit in the last few years. It's worth over $250 right now. It's got 3 bedrooms upstairs, 1 in the basement, which is where my Livein Manager is. My down payment for them was $11,000 because I'm sure you guys know there's 5% down for first-time home buyers. At that time, I was just living for free with roommates. I didn't know what Airbnb was. I expanded over the years to Airbnb, which increased the monthly surplus and was able for me to save for a second house pretty quickly. So I completed a 4-year degree at Western, and I've been a landlord ever since. I've experimented with different types of tenants and different ways of renting since I started in 2010. I got my real estate license just over 4 years ago, and I've always had a high interest in rentals and making money. How can I make money with the money that I have? How can I make money with other people's money, right? By getting rent in. I'm just going to tell a quick story quick story. When I was in Germany in 2015, I'm kind of adventurous, and I decided to fly to Germany, and I had nowhere to stay. And when I landed, there was a Comic-Con festival taking over the entire city, where everyone's dressing up in different comic characters, and all the hostels were booked, and all the hotels were like shot up. It was like 400 euros a night, and I was like totally stranded. So I kind of got forced into trying Airbnb because, like a lot of people, I was unsure that Airbnb was going to be safe. I didn't know what to expect, and it was still really new at that point. But I'm really lucky that I did get forced to stay in this really cool place. I had a guest room with a local German and his daughter, and he showed me where all the good places to go eat were, all that stuff. And I thought, I have an extra guest room at my house, like why don't I try this? And when I came home, I didn't think anyone would be interested in booking in London, Ontario, but obviously it's expanded and I have a bunch of rooms on there now because there's a lot of them. So that's pretty much how I got into Airbnb in the first place. The tax benefits, if you're doing this out of your own house, then you can write off bills for the house. So your property tax, part of it, depending on how much you rent out, is going to be a write-off, part of your hydro bill, part of your gas. It really depends on if you're going to invest in like a single family place where you're going to rent out a room or two, or if you do it in like a duplex situation. But just like if you're going to rent out any other room, there is tax benefits to it, because then the bills for the building that you live in are essentially partly a write-off. I'm not a tax expert, and I do have an accountant myself, and I would never try to give accounting advice, but I do know that Airbnb has benefited me for the way that I do my taxes, and even if you don't want to claim it, you have to legally. A lot of people ask, do you have to claim Airbnb income? And the answer is yes, you have to claim any money you make to the government of Canada because they want their cut, obviously. And if you don't claim it and they find out down the road that you didn't, you could be in for a world of hurt. And Airbnb is in contact with a lot of different parts of the government, and they are giving a lot of the information out about hosting because they want to work together with the Airbnb to make it better. So Airbnb will probably at some point be required to disclose the information that you've been paid out. So if you don't claim it, you can get in trouble later. So yeah, basically I've been doing this for 10 years. I used to get renters off Kijiji. I used to get renters off like Facebook or social media or whatever. I've learned a lot about Airbnb. Last year I went to LA for the Airbnb Open, which is essentially like this giant Airbnb convention. And I learned about like different themes for Airbnb, all the different ways people host all over the world, people that essentially retire off doing Airbnb, and this is all they do. So they don't have to work a regular job. Once you have a lot of these going, then you should be, you essentially don't have to work anymore if you set it up right. I learned a lot in LA about the business focus, and we can talk about that if you guys have any questions in the question part. So yeah, I've lived in London for 10 years on and off. The multiple offer situations have changed. They change all the time. You have to stay on top of the market. Some houses will go $5,000 over list, and some will go $40,000 over list. So being up to date on the specific area and what's going on in the market is key to not overpaying or not losing out on the house. So I've worked with different types of investors. I've worked with people that are first-time home buyers that just want to rent out one room on Airbnb just to kind of help with the bills. First-time home buyers that want just a strictly investment property or just to live in one of the rooms. Also investors that don't even live in the house that I've worked with from Toronto. So they just buy it, and then I helped them hire a live-in manager, and then that property is still going for that one. One of them that's on Blackfriars has been going for 10 months now, and that's been running really well. So there's a difference between a first-time home buyer, obviously, and a repeat investor. So there's different ways to set the investments up for different people. So each area in London caters to a different type of Airbnb travel. I mean, I'm sure it's common sense that if it's by Western University, it's going to be more so for Western students. And finish on that kind of thing, but there is a lot of different aspects like the hospital or downtown. There's different people that are business travelers that are going to be in certain areas. Basically setting up the Airbnb in the initial stages is key to the success. You want there to be no complaints, especially in the first few reviews, because complaints is going to be fewer or no bookings. If the ad is wrong or you're not catering to the right people, it's going to cause problems. The initial stages are essentially vital to the success and how much money you can make in this type of an investment. So, can I show some examples? Yes. 93 Langer Street West is a listing that just went active today. This is the one we're going to have the opportunity to go walk through after if you guys want to. It's essentially a turnkey rental property that has already been set up as an Airbnb if the buyer so chooses to keep it as an Airbnb. It's listed for $199.9. It's got 4 beds, so one of the beds would be used for a live-in manager. This one's near Warncliffe. It's not too far from Wortley Village, but it's not on the Wortley side of Warncliffe. There's, like I said, there's the option to walk through after, but it's on bus routes. This is overview of the income since the owner bought it in, they bought it in July, and then we set up the Airbnb and everything in September. So there's 4 different bedrooms. Essentially, you can see what each bedroom brought in for the month. March is to be determined, February is to be determined because Airbnb can get booked up to the last minute on the same day. So I don't know what's gonna happen for these 2, but I did get some numbers together for the 5 months that we have already got the data for, and I'll give you a little bit more information there. So we've tracked like the hydro, the gas, the taxes, insurance and everything. You can see that the property is netting $2,100 in September. September is always a busy month because the students are switching over. October it was $2,000. November it went down a bit for just about $1,300. December it can be a slow month in Airbnb. It's just the way it's been in all the properties I've experienced. So that one netted $804. And then January went back up to $1,600. In February we haven't finished yet. So the average monthly income is $2,100 gross, and this property, if you were doing market rent, would not rent for more than $1,200. So maybe you could do $1,200 plus utilities, but the average out of those 5 months that it's been on the market is going to be just over $2,100. The average monthly income net after the bills for the house, which is the important number, is just about $1,600. So the net yearly income potential approximately is 20 grand if you multiply that by 12, and the cap rate at this list price for $199.9 is 10. So it's gonna beat out family rentals, it's gonna beat out student rentals, it's gonna beat out any cap rate for single family residential type situation. I also like to talk about how quickly can you get your money back out of an investment, right? So if you're putting 20% down and you were gonna get a commercial mortgage, or sorry, not a commercial, a mortgage that you're not gonna live on the property, so it's gonna be an investment one, 20% down is gonna be $40,000. So if you're netting 20 grand a year, you're essentially gonna make your money back in 2 years. There's not a lot of ways that you can make your initial down payment back that quickly in other ways, unless it's a vacation property in a different area. But anything that's market rent in London, it's gonna take a lot longer. So this is just an example just to show you guys the difference. Family market rent for a house maybe that is gonna go for $330,000, you're maybe gonna get $1,300, which is gonna be $15,000 yearly. Minus the cost is gonna be netting 6 grand. The cap rate, if you're gonna pay for a house at $330,000 is 1.99, $350 is 1.88, and $400,000 is gonna be 1.64. So if you're buying a 5 to 6 bedroom in any of those 3 price points, obviously the cap rate's gonna keep going down the more money that you're spending if you're just renting it to a single family. The student market rent, which is like the next level up, which is gonna be a bit better, is gonna be about $3,000, because you can get about $500 or $600 per room. So the yearly income is gonna be $33,000 to $43,000, depending on if you have 5 or 6 bedrooms. Minus your costs, the net is gonna be $23,000 to $34,000. So the cap rate at $400,000 is gonna be somewhere around 5.99 to 8.54, which is obviously better than family rentals, but it's still not gonna be up to that Airbnb cap rate. So Airbnb, you're gonna get $4,000 to $5,000 a month incoming for 5 to 6 bedrooms with the this is for 4 to 5 bedrooms, and then it includes the Livein Manager. So the Livein Manager at $300 a month is gonna add $3,600. So minus the expenses, if you're doing an Airbnb, you're looking at $38,000 to $50,000. So if you spend $350,000 on the property, the cap rate is gonna be 11.13. If you spend $400,000, it's gonna be 12.74. So again, it's that higher rate. The reason this one is higher than the Landgraf one is obviously because this is for a 5 to 6 bedroom. So the more bedrooms that you have in the house, the more money you're gonna make. So Airbnb gives you the potential to make your money back before you've even owned the house for 2 years. If you're gonna put 20% down, the down payment's gonna be 60 grand. 25% down is going to be $82,000. So if you can net that money back quicker, you can either pay off the mortgage faster or reinvest it into a different property or go on vacation to Costa Rica with the extra money, which is what I want to do. So can you buy a condo or a townhouse for less? Yes. Do I recommend it? No. In my experience, condo boards, you can have problems with them. They always want to get their hands on everything that you're doing. A lot of them have pretty much in their condo board rules and declaration that you can't do short-term rentals anyways. So they kind of block you from doing it. I've seen some people do it with 1 or 2 bedrooms and have no problems, but if you're gonna get into investing in this, I always recommend freehold. Because you don't wanna have problems with it after you set it up and put all the furniture in and get the manager and then find out you can't do it. So yeah, each investor is unique based on your budget, risk management, and level of involvement you wanna do. Some people wanna do this where, like what I did when I first started, you live in the house and you clean it and you do the management and you save the fees on that, but obviously I was doing that for a while and I got to a level where I was so busy in real estate and with my other house that I bought, there was no way I could do that, and it was no longer worth it to be the live-in manager for myself. So we're gonna have a mortgage moment with Carmen. We're gonna talk about a few different financing options, and I will kind of let you take it from here. You wanna come up here?
Thanks, Candace.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote on the back of this.
Okay.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Carmen Alpertz. I've been a mortgage broker for 35 years, so I've seen all the markets evolve and so on. Very first thing I'm going to say is it's very, very important if you're looking at investing is to deal with professionals. Candace is definitely a professional. She knows what she's doing and she will hold your hand. It's the team that you have to have, and it's basically the same if look what happened to the stock market, right? Real estate is a very, very, very good investment, and it's very important to diversify. And there's a lot of strategic planning, so professionals again. So a good mortgage broker, there's a lot of banks right now. If you hit them with the big 5, you hit them with a Airbnb, they will go, oh, no, they don't like short-term rentals. However, I do deal with over 60 lenders. There are institutions that will look at these even with 15% down. They do insure their own. The rates are a little bit higher. However, it is an investment, so your accountant will show you how you can actually get your interest back. You're doing an investment, it's the cost of doing an investment. I don't know how many of you have bought homes before, but as a first-time home buyer, and if you're living in the property, and you're going very gradually and slowly into this, it's a good idea you can go with 5% down, and as long as there are mortgage companies making, or the bank's getting their mortgage payments, you can basically gradually go into it, and as long as you're insured property, very, very important. It's a good idea to get pre-qualified. It's the same as checking when you're checking on the property. Again, you ask the expert. You get your insurance, you have your accountant, you talk to your accountant before you invest, because they will show you as well if the interest rates are a little bit higher or if there's costs involved, which with alternative lending, usually just be prepared. There are lenders like to charge 1% of the mortgage amount, but it's like a self-insurance. So if you were putting 15% down on a regular property, you'd have to pay the CMHC fee anyways. Lenders will add that fee to the mortgage the same way as CMHC. And I just thought I'd add a couple more things. If a student is renting for 4 months or 6 months or anything, you can always get the parent to co-sign. We actually encourage that as well. Credit checks can be done on them if somebody's on a long-term lease as well, so you feel more comfortable. And I can get more into that with you because I can help as long as the clients have signed consents for it. There's other types of people that also rent these. You can go corporate. Once you know what you're doing, somebody like General Dynamics in their diesel division will bring in a sergeant from the States, and they can stay up to 1 year at a time. And they will take the whole property usually, or when there's not too many rooms, and they'll pay you the lease whether it's occupied or not. So that's just another thing to keep in mind. That's very important that I've seen. That's like what I like to get into. A lot of people have thought, oh, I want to invest, and last year they said we'll wait till next year, but look at all the changes. You're going to be seeing a lot more changes coming up. A lot of consumer debt. Government is trying to push the interest rates up, making it a lot more difficult, which is good for investors because there will be a lot more rentals because of all the government changes. It's making it very, very difficult for first-time home buyers and investors. So you want to wait till next year and see what happens? Well, like I said, look what's happened in the last year. Look what's happened with property values. Look what's happened with the government changes, now with the interest rates. So now's a really good time. I don't think that, like, the interest rates are as low as they've been in about 500 years. I've seen a lot evolve. I've been around when they were 21%. So any of you brand new purchasers, there's never been a better time. I think, do you have any questions? Like I said, I could sit here and talk for hours, but like I said, make sure you strategize, and if you want ideas of rent, how much you have to put down or anything, I can answer those questions.
Yeah, so I'm thinking more, what kind of rates are we looking at for, like, if you use a property for Airbnb?
Well, there's, again, strategy. There's a couple of ways to do this. A lot of people have been brainwashed and so on. Don't stay away from second mortgages. Well, you can break it up into two, and you can actually do a lower first and a second. You don't have to use private investors. The market has changed a lot. So as soon as somebody yells private investor, say, Carmen, let's talk before we go private investor. You don't need private investors. So let's say with 15% down, they will go to a 40-year amortization, which will keep your payments really, really low. You're laughing, right? So a rate on that would be, depending on your credit, depending on the property, rate would be 6.49, which isn't bad. The bank posted rate right now is over 5%. So I'm not talking 12, 15%. Even on a second mortgage, 9.9 up to 85%. You can go to an institution. You don't need a private. And they'll usually charge a 1% fee, and they'll add that rate on over and above the 85%, which is really good. But I like the amortization over 45 years or over 40 years because it is an investment. It's not a property that you are trying to pay off as fast as possible, yet it gives you the option that you can pay it off because now your payments are lower to the mortgage company. You're actually keeping a lot more of the rental income. So it's a great idea for buying investment. Any other questions?
Is there a limit on the amount of, like, do they care how many rooms you have, or like the mortgage company? Do they care?
You just have to submit it honestly, what you're going to be doing with it, right?
Absolutely.
And disclose it.
Disclose it, and make sure that the spreadsheet's done with the income and expenses,
right.
And that's another thing that.
And yeah, in London you can only do 5 rooms for a rental anyways. That's the license for the bylaws, unless it's been grandfathered in and it was an older house and it already had a license for 6 bedrooms, then that's the exception. But most of the time for anything in here, you're only going to get 5 bedrooms if you're going to get a rental license through the City of London. So regardless of what the lender is willing to do, you're kind of like limited on that front. If it's a duplex though, and you're technically in 2 separate areas, then you could have 10 bedrooms in a property, because then you're having 5 and 5. But if there's not 2 kitchens and it's not separate, then you're kind of like a little bit limited. Or you could live in the 6th bedroom if you're going to do it like that, if the property is only licensed for 5 rental bedrooms. So there's different ways that you can pretty much make it work for you.
Duplexes are very, very good. I even tell my first-time home buyers, depending on if you need to qualify with income. Very, very important as well that you qualify to do the purchase. So the more that you qualify, the higher price property, obviously, that you can buy. So if you're looking to use any rental income, in order to qualify, I say duplex is a very good idea, especially if you owner occupy one, and if you've never done this before, owner occupy one of the sides or up and down, and test out the other side.
Okay, I'm gonna turn these off so we can chat.